The ocean has a cruel way of keeping its secrets. It swallows names, memories, entire lives, and sometimes it gives them back when you least expect it. For 6 years, Ethan Cole believed the storm had taken the only partner he ever trusted. Every nightmare, every sleepless night, every scar on his body carried the same memory, a pair of amber eyes disappearing beneath black Atlantic water during the worst rescue mission of his career. But on a freezing November evening, standing alone near a crowded ferry terminal in Boston Harbor, Ethan heard something that turned his blood to ice. A bark, not just any bark, his bark, the kind that once echoed through burning buildings and collapsing stairwells. The kind that had saved his life more times than he could count. And when Ethan turned around, the ghost he had buried years ago was staring directly at him through the rain. His name was Atlas, and he was supposed to be dead. Slow cinematic music begins. Ethan Cole had spent most of his adult life running toward danger, while everyone else ran away from it. At 34 years old, the former Marine turned Boston firefighter looked older than he really was. Trauma had a way of aging people unevenly. His shoulders were broad but permanently slumped as if invisible weight hung from his spine. A pale scar stretched across his jawline from an apartment fire in Roxbury. His knuckles were rough, his eyes constantly tired. But years ago, before the exhaustion hollowed him out, there had been light in him. Most of that light came from a Belgian Malinois named Atlas. Ethan met the dog during a specialized urban rescue training program in Virginia back in 2016. Atlas was young then, lean, muscular, restless. His coat was dark gold with black markings around the muzzle, giving him the appearance of a wolf carved from shadow. The trainers warned Ethan immediately. Smartest dog in the program, one instructor told him, but stubborn as hell. Atlas had already failed 2 handler evaluations, not because he lacked skill. The dog was almost unnaturally intelligent. He could detect survivors beneath concrete using scent alone, navigate unstable structures, respond to over 40 verbal and hand commands. The problem was trust. Atlas refused to obey handlers who treated him like equipment. Ethan understood that immediately. Maybe because he hated being treated like machinery, too. Their bond began quietly. Not through dominance, not through force, through patience. While other handlers barked orders, Ethan sat silently beside Atlas after training sessions. He shared pieces of his sandwich, scratched behind the dog's ears, spoke to him like a partner instead of a tool. 3 days later, Atlas chose him. The instructors noticed it instantly. The dog followed Ethan everywhere after that. Training fields, mess hall, barracks parking lot. At night, Atlas would sleep beside Ethan's bunk with one eye partially open, alert even in rest. It was loyalty in its purest form, the kind you cannot fake. Together, they became one of the top urban rescue teams on the East Coast. By 2018, Ethan and Atlas were deployed across multiple disaster zones, collapsed parking garages, gas explosions, hurricanes. News crews occasionally captured footage of them emerging from smoke-covered ruins with survivors in tow. People called Atlas a hero. Ethan hated that word, because hero implied survival. And survival was never guaranteed, especially not during Hurricane Sadie. Even years later, people in Massachusetts still spoke about the storm in lowered voices. Sadie arrived in October without mercy. 70-mile-per-hour winds, coastal flooding, entire neighborhoods underwater. Emergency services were overwhelmed within hours. Ethan's unit was dispatched to Gloucester Harbor after reports that a passenger fishing vessel had capsized near the docks during evacuation efforts. The conditions were apocalyptic. Rain hammered sideways like needles. Power lines sparked across flooded streets. Sirens screamed endlessly through the darkness, and somewhere beyond the crashing waves, people were trapped. Atlas sensed the danger immediately. Ethan remembered the way the dog paced near the rescue truck, muscles tight, ears pinned back against the storm. Animals understood things humans ignored. Fear, death, the feeling that something terrible was waiting in the dark. But duty didn't care about fear. They boarded the emergency rescue boat just after midnight. 6 responders, 1 canine, and an ocean already turning violent. The waves slammed against the hull hard enough to rattle teeth. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Rain blurred the harbor into shifting shadows. Then they found the wreck, or what remained of it. The fishing vessel had split nearly in half against the rocks near the old harbor wall. Survivors clung desperately to twisted metal while freezing water crashed around them. People were screaming. One woman held a child above the water with shaking arms. Everything after that became chaos. Ropes, commands, flashlights cutting through rain. Atlas moved like instinct given physical form. He navigated slippery wreckage without hesitation, helping guide stranded passengers toward rescue lines. Ethan still remembered hearing one little girl crying hysterically until Atlas reached her. The moment the dog pressed against her chest, she stopped screaming, as if somehow she knew she was safe. Then the second wave hit, massive, black, unnatural. It slammed into the vessel broadside. Metal screamed. People were thrown sideways. Ethan hit the deck hard enough to lose breath. Water swallowed everything in freezing darkness. For several terrifying seconds, he couldn't tell which direction was up. Then he heard barking. Atlas. The dog was trapped. Part of the collapsed mast had pinned him near the edge of the wreckage. Ethan crawled toward him immediately. Atlas! The dog barked again, sharp panicked. Water surged over the deck. Another responder grabbed Ethan's jacket. "We have to move now!" But Ethan wouldn't leave him. He reached Atlas just as the wreck shifted violently beneath them. For one brief moment, their eyes locked, and Ethan saw it. Trust. Complete and absolute. The kind only built through years beside death together. Ethan grabbed the metal beam trapping the dog and pulled with everything he had. It moved. Just slightly. Enough for Atlas to begin crawling free. Then the entire vessel groaned. Someone screamed, and suddenly the deck beneath them collapsed. The world disappeared into icy black water. Ethan remembered fragments afterward. Hands dragging him upward, coughing seawater onto the rescue boat, voices shouting, lights spinning overhead. But Atlas was gone. Search teams looked for hours. Divers searched the harbor for 2 days. Nothing. No body. No trace. Eventually, the official report listed Atlas as lost during rescue operations, presumed drowned. Ethan stopped reading after that line. Something inside him broke permanently after the storm, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, like glass cracking beneath pressure. He returned to work 3 months later, but everyone noticed the difference. The laughter disappeared first, then the patience, then sleep. He became colder, distant. Some nights, fellow firefighters found him sitting alone inside the station garage, long after shifts ended, staring silently at rain hitting the pavement. The nightmares were worse. In them, Atlas was always drowning, always just beyond reach. Ethan started drinking to silence the images. Whiskey before bed, whiskey after shifts, whiskey anytime the memories surfaced. Relationships collapsed quickly after that. People can only compete with ghosts for so long. By 2024, Ethan lived alone in a tiny apartment overlooking Boston Harbor. He rarely spoke to anyone outside work. The walls were bare except for one framed photograph near the kitchen table. Him and Atlas, taken after a rescue mission in Connecticut. The dog looked directly at the camera. Ethan never could. Then came the phone call. It happened on a Thursday evening in November. Rain tapped softly against the apartment windows while Ethan half-watched some late-night baseball rerun. His phone buzzed across the table. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Yeah? Static crackled briefly. Then a woman spoke. "Is this Ethan Cole?" His stomach tightened instantly. Nobody called him by his full name anymore. "Yes. My name is Rebecca Lawson. I work with Northeast Harbor Animal Recovery." Ethan frowned. "I think there's been some mistake. There's a dog here," she continued carefully. "A retired rescue canine transferred from a private maritime holding facility." Silence. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. "So?" The woman hesitated. "He responds to the name Atlas." Everything inside Ethan stopped. No sound, no breath, nothing. "That's impossible." "We thought so too," Rebecca admitted. "But there's more. The dog has an old healed fracture consistent with records from your rescue unit." And she paused again. "He reacts strongly to your photograph." Ethan stood so quickly the chair nearly fell backward. "No," his voice cracked. "No, Atlas died. That's what the records say." Ethan gripped the table edge hard enough for his knuckles to whiten. "How?" "We don't know yet. The Harbor Authority intercepted an illegal animal transport vessel 3 days ago. Several dogs were recovered. Most were unidentified." The room suddenly felt smaller, hotter. "This isn't funny. I assure you, Mr. Cole, nobody here is joking." Ethan closed his eyes. His heart hammered painfully against his ribs. Where are you? Pier 19, near the old ferry terminal. The drive to the harbor felt unreal. Rain blurred the windshield while memories crashed violently through Ethan's mind. Atlas running through smoke. Atlas asleep beside the fire truck. Atlas vanishing beneath black water. His hands trembled against the steering wheel. Part of him already knew this was impossible. Another part was terrified it wasn't. Boston Harbor looked haunting at night. Fog rolled low across the docks, while old ferry lights flickered against wet pavement. Workers moved shipping containers beneath cold floodlights. Rebecca Lawson waited near a warehouse entrance wearing a navy raincoat. You came fast, she said softly. Ethan barely heard her. Where is he? She studied his face carefully before nodding toward the building. I need to warn you. He's been through something traumatic. Ethan almost laughed at that. So have I. Inside, the warehouse smelled like seawater and disinfectant. Rows of temporary kennels lined the walls. Dogs barked nervously from the shadows. Then Ethan heard it, a growl, low, deep, familiar. His entire body froze. At the far end of the room, partially hidden beneath dim fluorescent light, stood a large Belgian Malinois, older now, thinner, scars visible beneath patchy fur, but unmistakable. The jagged nick along the right ear remained exactly the same. Atlas. Ethan couldn't move. The dog stared at him silently. No barking, no excitement. Just intense, unbroken focus. Years collapsed between them instantly. Oh my God. Atlas took one cautious step forward, then another. Ethan's vision blurred. The dog stopped several feet away, muscles tense, as if uncertain whether the man before him was real. And suddenly Ethan understood. Atlas thought he'd been abandoned too. That realization shattered him. His knees buckled slightly. Atlas. The dog's ears twitched. Ethan's voice broke completely. It's me, buddy. For one endless second, nothing happened. Then Atlas moved. Not running, not charging, sprinting. The dog collided into Ethan with enough force to nearly knock him backward. Whines erupted from deep in Atlas's throat while he pressed desperately against Ethan's chest, and Ethan finally broke. Years of grief detonated inside him all at once. He wrapped both arms around the dog and sobbed. Not quiet tears, violent, uncontrollable grief, the kind buried so deeply it becomes part of your bones. Atlas whined louder, pawing frantically at Ethan's shoulders, as if trying to reassure himself this wasn't another dream. Workers inside the warehouse stopped moving. Nobody spoke. Because some moments are too sacred for interruption, Ethan buried his face into the dog's neck. You're alive, he whispered repeatedly. You're alive. Atlas licked tears from his face exactly the way he used to after difficult rescue calls. Like no time had passed at all. Later, Rebecca explained what investigators believed happened. After the storm, Atlas had apparently been swept miles from the wreckage before reaching shoreline debris farther north. A private smuggling crew operating illegal maritime cargo routes found him injured but alive. Instead of reporting him, they kept him, used him for security aboard transport vessels. Years hidden from authorities, years stolen. The anger Ethan felt hearing that nearly consumed him, but Atlas was here now, breathing, alive, and somehow still loving the man who failed to save him. That was the part Ethan struggled understanding most. How? He asked quietly later while sitting beside Atlas's kennel. Rebecca looked confused. How what? How does he still trust me? The woman watched the dog resting against Ethan's boots. Because to him, she said softly, you probably never stopped being home. Atlas returned with Ethan 2 days later. The adjustment wasn't easy. Trauma had changed both of them. The dog startled violently at loud noises, slept lightly, sometimes paced the apartment for hours during storms. Ethan understood every symptom because he carried the same ones. Healing came slowly, but it came together. Morning walks became routine again, then longer hikes. Then afternoons near the harbor where Atlas would sit quietly beside Ethan, watching boats drift across gray water. For the first time in years, Ethan started sleeping without whiskey beside the bed. Some nights he still woke from nightmares. But Atlas was always there, always pressing close the moment Ethan's breathing changed. Like he remembered his job never truly ended. Months later, a young firefighter at Ethan's station asked him something during lunch break. Why'd you never get another dog after Atlas disappeared? Ethan looked toward the station garage, where Atlas now rested peacefully near the engine trucks. Then he smiled faintly. Because some bonds only happen once in a lifetime. You don't replace family, he said quietly. The story spread online faster than anyone expected. News stations called it miraculous. Social media called it unbelievable. But people who had truly loved something before understood immediately. Hope survives in strange places, sometimes beneath wreckage, sometimes inside grief, and sometimes in the heart of a dog who refused to forget the human he loved. Even after 6 years, even after the storm, even after the world told them both to let go, soft piano music begins. There's an old saying among rescue workers: the ocean never returns the same person it takes. Maybe that's true. Ethan and Atlas both came back scarred, older, haunted, but they came back together, and sometimes that's enough. If this story touched your heart, remember to subscribe for more emotional stories about loyalty, survival, and the extraordinary bonds that refuse to die.